It looks like professional.
I like it looking professional.
What's funny is that you sit there and you have all this nice stuff.
I'm getting there any second. I'm live.
5 million.
It looks like professional.
All right, and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I guess it's good afternoon at this point. Thank you for showing up on this Thursday, March 26th. I appreciate y'all coming today, and today we're going to be talking about Iran. So when I last left off, I talked about Jimmy Carter having an issue with Iran, but I said we were going to get more into it today. So we're going to do that. Today we're going to dive into what exactly was going on. All right, and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I guess it's good afternoon. My plan when we were going to have this thank you for showing up on this Thursday, March 26th. Something that was a very I appreciate y'all coming today. And I'm not saying today we're going to be talking about Iran. So when I last left off, I put a little bit on the back burner. Jimmy Carter having an issue with Iran, but I said we were going to get more into it today. So we're going to do that. Today we're going to dive into what exactly was going on. All right, and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I guess it's good afternoon. My plan when we were going to have this thank you for showing up on this Thursday, March 26th. Something that was a very I appreciate y'all coming today. And I'm not saying today we're going to be talking about Iran. So when I last left off, I put a little bit on the back burner. Jimmy Carter having an issue with Iran, but I said we were going to get more into it today. So we're going to do that. Today we're going to dive into what exactly was going on. All right, and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I guess it's good afternoon. My plan when we were going to have this thank you for showing up on this Thursday, March 26th. Something that was a very I appreciate y'all coming today. And I'm not saying today we're going to be talking about Iran. So when I last left off, I put a little bit on the back burner. Jimmy Carter having an issue with Iran, but I said we were going to get more into it today. So we're going to do that. Today we're going to dive into what exactly was going on. All right, and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I guess it's good afternoon. My plan. All right, thank you for showing up on this Thursday, March 26th. Something that was a very I appreciate y'all coming today. And I'm not saying today we're going to be talking about Iran. So when I last left off, I put a little bit on the back burner. Jimmy Carter having an issue with Iran, but I said we were going to get more into it today. So we're going to do that. Today we're going to dive into what exactly was going on. All right, and good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. Yeah, some things of note. Iran claims that they don't have any peace Thursday, but they've had to pile up their dead so much that you can see the dead bodies from space with the mass graves. So they're definitely dealing with it just like we are. Issue with Iran, but I said we were going to get more into it today. So we're going to do that. Today we're going to dive into what exactly was going on. All right, a couple things of note. I did talk with Mr. Sampson today. One of the things he talked about was potential office hours. He wanted me to. Oh, can you not hear me? That you can see the dead bodies from space with the mass graves. So they're definitely dealing with it just like we are. Oh, okay. Never mind. There we go. Is that better? I think I was double talking. I had my earphones plugged in. I did a Zoom meeting today with Mr. Sampson. Yeah. I fixed it now. It should be fine now, right, Noel? Anyway, so I did a Zoom meeting with Mr. Sampson. He said for me to keep up with all work that is being done. So I think what's going to end up happening is a lot of this is going to be for bonus. Or if I end up assigning it, it will replace you having to do it. So it may end up being that all the people that are not tuning in have to do it. They just have to do it on their own. So you're jumping ahead of the curve, I believe, by doing this. But he does seem to think that we'd be able to enter grades in at some point. So you're definitely going to get credit for doing this. So, anyways. All right, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get going. Well, actually, we only got one more person. Let's see if anybody else joins real fast. Give some people some time.
Wait, who?
It's only 12:03. Usually we start at 12:05. So, how are you holding up there, Noel? Have you been holding up, Elizabeth?
The lag, though.
Yeah, there's some lag.
I've been fine.
Yeah.
Wait, I go from the same house as you, so
yeah.
You should know this.
You play some board games today or something?
Yeah.
All right. Good.
That lag, though.
Let me make another announcement.
For anyone who wants to join,
All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get going. Looks like we got some more people joining in. Let's see. Oh, Mr. Hernandez, welcome aboard. Diana, welcome. Ms. Patel, welcome. Ms. Quinn, glad to have y'all with us. Okay, so today we're talking about Iran. So first of all, I'm going to say, where is Iran? Hopefully y'all learned that from geography, but just in case you've not, this little nation right here is Iran.
Hello, Iran.
Yep. Okay, and so Iran used to be part of what was known as the Persian Empire, right? So this area right here used to be the kind of middle of the Persian Empire. Now, this is the same Persian Empire you probably read about in history books, this giant Islamic empire that kind of slowly was conquering the Middle East and stuff like that. Slowly over time, it's going to be weakened, and it's going to end up being divided up into separate countries. One example you may know is if you ever seen the movie 300, King Xerxes. He was a king of the Persian Empire. Of course, this guy here on the left, that is what King Xerxes actually looked like. He did not look like this guy running around with no shirt on from the movie 300. But that is the actual King Xerxes. Now, due to weakness in the government, there's a guy named Reza Shah. Okay, was able to take control of Iran by overthrowing this government. Now, it should be known, Shah is kind of like their version of king, right? He's the guy that's the monarch. And he creates a constitutional monarchy, which means he's the king, but theoretically they have a prime minister and stuff like that that kind of runs the physical government, right? And through his prime minister, he begins to westernize Iran. One of the most controversial things he'd do is he would ban the hijab. Now, anybody that knows anything about Islam, that is the head garment that they're required to wear if they're Islamic. And he actually bans it to the point where he tells the police, look, if you see somebody wearing a hijab, you are to rip it off their head. Because of this, many die in riots and rebellions. And the entire time, he's living in luxury, right? He's living high on the horse, really living it up, right? Okay, so why do you think banning the hijab was a particularly unpopular decision? And welcome aboard, Mr. Velasquez. And by the way, you can see the little picture right here of the hijab. Why do you think that was a particularly problematic thing? What do you think, Elizabeth?
Because that's a key thing in their, but that's a key thing in their religion. And that's
welcome aboard, Miss Bowman.
That's something they think is mandatory for their religion.
Yeah, in the Islamic faith, a woman's beauty is for her husband alone, right? So they believe that you should wear the hijab as a form of modesty. So for them, it's almost like you're forcing them to sin in a way.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wait, why didn't he want them to wear that?
He's trying to modernize. He's trying to westernize it, like move away from Eastern values and move toward a Western mindset. And I think he kind of saw it as that was kind of a sign of a physical representation of still being part of the old way of doing things, right? It's very obvious you're not a westernized country if everybody's walking around with a hijab. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing is beauty in the eye of the beholder type situation, but it's a clear sign. It would be the same thing like if you go to Indonesia and everybody's wearing batik. It would be a clear sign that clearly this is not a Western country. Right, Quinn makes the point too. It was key for their religion, right? It was absolutely vital for their faith. Absolutely. Give some more people some time to type an answer. Yeah, right. It was part of their religion. Absolutely. Diana's right. Absolutely. Part of their religion. Alright, we're going to go a little bit longer and I'm going to have to move on. Beautiful. Alright, looks like everybody's got it. Now, during World War II, Iran decided to remain neutral, right? They didn't help the Allies and they didn't help the Axis powers. Now, the Shah was forced to, because of that, the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union decided to team up and invade Iran, kind of as a punishment for not helping them against the Nazis, right? So the Shah is forced to give up running the country, and he decides to pass it down to his son. I'm going to try and enunciate this. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. And he does then at the Tehran Conference in 43, the big three, Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill, decided what boundaries exactly Iran would have. So they carved up Iran and forced him to give his power up to his son. Okay, so why do you think the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union had such an interest in Iran? Oh, welcome aboard, Miss Williams. Absolutely, right. It's for their religion. That's right. And Miss Williams, if you want to join in with Nearpod, you're welcome to. The code is in the chat. The CVRJP.
And it's also at the top of the screen.
All right, welcome aboard, Kaylin.
We have a lot of people today. Usually it's only like 3, 4 people.
Well, hopefully we get more, considering they all have to. Because they didn't help the Allies. I kind of wanted somebody to dig a little deeper. What is it you think Iran has that everybody wanted?
Nuclear weapons.
No, it's not nukes. What do they have in Iran that everybody wants? Sorry. What do we want out of Iran today? Do you know? Any guesses? Why do we always go mess with the Middle East? What do they have?
I don't know.
We talked about it yesterday. What does the Middle East have?
We talked about the 1970s yesterday.
What does the Middle East have that everybody always wants over there?
I don't know.
You put it in your car.
Oh, fuel.
Yeah, oil. Right, they have oil. And that's going to be a huge resource that is going to come to a head, and everybody is aware of it. Ah, there we go, Mr. Velasco. That's right. Because of their beliefs and because of their oil. Right. If they just wanted to go be Islamic and do their own thing, even set up a theocracy, whatever it was, we probably wouldn't care. Indonesia's very Islamic. It's the most Islamic country on the planet, but we're not constantly trying to conquer Indonesia, right? Most of Africa is kind of left to their own devices on the most part these days, except obviously Congo. Do y'all know why? You know why Russia's always messing with the Congo? Diamonds. That's where we get all our diamonds from. There we go, because Iran has oil. Okay, so Soviets will then create 2 puppet states. So you're going to turn Iran into these 2 puppet states, right? These 2 different countries. And they're going to name it the Azerbaijan and the Republic of Mohammed. Now, these puppet states were established to help the Soviets secure oil there, and the 2 were overthrown in 46, and the free oil was sent to the Soviets was stopped. Okay, so Russia tries to come in and take the country over, carve it up to make sure they get oil, and then the people take it back, right? So the Shah will flee to Italy with the help of the U.S. and the United Kingdom. That's right. They were interested in their oil and their religion. That's right. So the CIA and MI6, that's kind of like their version of the CIA in the United Kingdom, would work together to create a military coup that would remove the democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mazda. Oh, why is my slide ahead of yours? Okay, because there's a lag. You're watching it on YouTube and there's a lag to it. Yeah, here. I'll go back. Let's see. Yeah, everybody's answer made it in. Yeah, all your answers made it in. Yeah, there is a bit of a lag, so. Okay, so Mohammad Reza Pahlavi would become the new Shah again, right? So the government that is installed by the Russians, this guy right here, the government that's installed by the Russians, that goes away. They elect their own democratic leader, this guy right here, And the Shah comes in and takes it back over with the help of the U.S. government. So why would the U.S. work to remove a democratically elected ruler in Iran? Why would they do that, do you think?
Because they wanted a fair government like we had.
No. I mean, that's the pitch they told. But what is it they want?
I don't know. I'm not
We just
Iran.
talked about it. What does Iran have?
Oil.
Trying to get that oil. That's right. They saw that the Russians were not controlling the region anymore. They wanted to control the region because they wanted that oil. That's right. It's all about resources, right? We're all trying to figure out how do we get ahead of that oil. Make sure we have it. Oh, you don't have to join. You can just tell me.
I'm joining.
You want to type it out?
Open-ended.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Raby. And I tell you, that is the pitch they told everybody. It's right. But I mean, this guy was elected, right? He won a fair election. Mr. Hernandez, I think, kind of puts it perfectly. They wanted that oil. They wanted to make sure that they got a hold of that oil.
Question: why is bread in the refrigerator?
It stays longer that way, Joe. If you want some, you're welcome to take it out, though.
Just eat the bread. It's okay.
That's right. All y'all seem to be getting it. They had interest in the oil. That's right. They wanted the oil.
I'm Liz, you guys.
Y'all like my fancy new background for the live stream? Got that Captain America flavor.
Wait, what live stream?
Flavor,
It's my live
Captain
stream.
America's shield. It's not flavor.
See?
It's.
You got that Captain America shield in the background.
Wait, why do you have it like that?
I just like it like that.
Oh, hey,
No,
look,
I-
Okay.
New King.
So Mohammad Reza Pahlavi becomes the new Shah, and he maintains a close relationship with the U.S., right? So we're getting that oil now. Both regimes shared an opposition to the expansion of the Soviet Union. So they're helping us get oil, and at the same time, we're also hating us some united Soviet Union together. Now, like his father, this new Shah focused on westernizing Iran. And again, much like his dad, he began to disregard any religious measures, disregard religion, and start trying to oppress Islam there in the country. Okay, so how do you think the people like these reforms? All these westernizing, forcing people to give up their religion. I don't know why there's a C at the end. That must have been a typo. But how do you think the people will respond to this?
Probably in a negative manner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're not going to like being told they can't practice their faith.
They'd be aggravated, frustrated.
Oh, and while you're typing your answers, I did have a Zoom meeting today with Mr. Sampson. He seems to think that all the stuff will be for a grade. What'll probably end up happening is it'll be bonus, and then when everybody else has to do it, like when they're required to do it, you won't have to. So it'll probably be stuff I'll have to post on Google Classroom, and everybody has to do it on their own for a grade. Or if you've done it already, then you're covered. That makes sense.
It does not, because I'm not a student of yours. So.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people today.
Okay, a lot of y'all saying that. So there is obviously some good things about westernizing. They're also industrializing at the same time, so that's good. But at the same time, Miss Wells puts it perfectly. The people hated his reforms. They don't like being told they can't practice their faith. I mean, that's one of the things that you can really do to make people angry, is start denying them the right to their faith.
I keep wanting to click edit answer because it's a big button in the middle of my screen and I want to click it, but I know I can't click it. I have to change my answer. I don't want to change my answer. Please. Ah! It's tricking me. Ooh, fancy. There's buttons. Ah. No. No! What did I do?
All right, let's move on.
What?
Now, Islamic groups began to attack the government. They often would be forced to attack from the outside because if they gave any hint of rebellion, they were exiled from Iran. And being exiled basically means you're kicked out of the country. They attacked the government for violating the Iranian constitution, for political corruption, and for political oppression. So from 63 to 78, the Shah would be even more aggressive in his reforms and westernizing the nation. He began to remove many political parties, and the social tensions began to rise. So like here we have Democrats and Republicans. Over in Iran they had a bunch of political parties, and he basically started dissolving those parties. Like they're not allowed to meet anymore. Despite his attempts at secularizing the nation, he would be more oppressive. The people turned more to religion as they felt that religion better represented them. Okay, so the more oppressive he got to try to force people out of their religion, the more religious they became. So why do you think people became more religious as he tried to force them away from their religion? Why do you think that is?
Because it's like leaving candy there, like a sucker there for like a baby. Be like, do not eat that, and then you leave the room. Because you told them not to eat that, they're going to want to eat it more.
Well, I think the big thing is it strengthens your resolve, right? Like the more you're, and this is kind of true in anything, like the more you have to fight for something, the more passionate you are about it, the more you get emboldened. You know, one of the things you'll notice is if you're in a country that's oppressive to religion and you stay that religion, you become very passionate about that religion. Yeah, and Miss Patel made the good point too. Religion at this point, they feel like is better representing them. You know, when the preachers and stuff like that are saying, hey, look, everybody should be treated with dignity and respect, and then the government is not treating you that way, that's definitely a message you can latch on to. You know, Raby makes the point too, is they're just not satisfied with his rule.
Do you have like shoulder pads on or something?
That's a suit.
The lag though.
Alright, let's move on. Okay, the Shah begins to implement trickle-down economics. Now, this will be a phrase kind of coined under the Reagan administration, but he's going to do it first. And these are like huge tax breaks given to large corporations with the hope that they'll pass the wealth down and eventually it'll trickle all the way down to the very poor. However, we've seen over time that the wealth never makes it all the way down to the poor. It just gets hoarded all the way up to the top. And the poor get really poor. So during this period of time, the rich are getting really rich, particularly with selling of oil. Here. Oh, it answered. It answered. You got it in there. Yeah, it's the lag. It's the lag. Okay. So enters this guy right here, and that's the Ayatollah. Now, the Ayatollah is kind of like the Pope, only for Islam. It's not exactly accurate, but just bear with me. That's kind of the best reference I can make, right? But much like Christianity, the Pope does not represent all of Christianity. Well, the Ayatollah doesn't represent all of Islam, right? So there's large chunks of people, but in Iran, he represents the will of Islam in Iran. And he begins to speak out against the Shah, right? So you got kind of like the Pope sitting in your backyard. You're in Italy, and the Pope's speaking out against the leader. So they decide to arrest him, right? This is like their version of the Pope. They arrest him in 63 for calling the Shah a wretched, miserable man who was embarked on the path towards the destruction of Islam in Iran. His arrest led to riots and many would die. So why do you think the Ayatollah spoke out against the Shah? Why do you think, Elizabeth?
Because he was telling people that they couldn't follow their own religion.
Right. Well, it wasn't just that. I mean, remember he wouldn't even let him wear the shawl. I mean, the hijab. I mean.
Because he was telling people that they couldn't practice their religion in their life.
That's right. And he was kind of supposed to be the spokesman for the religion. That's it. Mr. Raby chimed in and said they did not like the oppression of the religion, and that is absolutely correct. Right? He didn't like that. Yeah, he thinks the Shah is corrupt. That's true. And keep in mind too, the Shah is getting really rich. Right? He's living like a king. You know. Yeah, a lot of people felt like he was destroying Iran.
Go down. You can't see mine.
Right, that's right. Couldn't practice religion the way that they wanted to. All right, good stuff. That's right. Spoke out for the religion. Okay. Okay, now after 8 months of house arrest, he's finally freed and he begins to speak out against the Shah and his willingness to work with Israel. Now you got to understand, Israel is a Jewish country that had taken Palestinian land. It was kind of created after World War II. And that has always been a hotbed issue because it's kind of seen as the Jews versus the Muslims in that region. Particularly over the city of Jerusalem. So obviously Iran is going to side with the Palestinians. America has traditionally sided with Israel. So it becomes a hotbed issue. So this is further increasing, not only do we overthrow their democratically elected leader and put in this like really corrupt Shah, but on top of that we are siding kind of with their enemy, so to speak. He is arrested again and sentenced to exile, and he's forced to flee to Iraq, where he speaks out even more against the Shah. So they took their version of the Pope, and he exiles him, sends him out. Okay, so why do you think exiling the Ayatollah especially enraged the people of Iran? That he's just speaking out against the leader, and they kick him out of the country for it. What do you think?
Because he was standing up for their religion, and so they took away all of the only thing that was standing up for their religion. Like
well, what crime did he commit? Just used his freedom of speech, right?
Yeah. But they don't have the freedom.
Yeah, they do not have freedom of speech in Iran. And, it would be a shock to know that there's a lot of countries, in Indonesia even, it's a crime to blasphemy. Speak ill against Muhammad. Yeah, he was an important figure of their religion. That's right. That's absolutely right. Right, they took away the only person that was standing up for them in their religion. That's right.
Wait. There we go. No, I can't see it turn from thing to person.
There we go. Good stuff.
Good person. Yeah, not thing. Person.
Okay, we'll give it just one more minute.
Fancy smancy. Fancy smancy.
Okay. Now, from Iraq, the Ayatollah would call on the people to revolt, right? To basically stand up against their government. He said the people need to take back their country for Islam. And the people began to smuggle in cassette tapes of the Ayatollah. Now, maybe you're unaware of what cassette tapes are. They're what your parents used to listen to music to.
I don't know what that is.
I'll have to bring one in and show it to you if I can find one. But they were things you could put in a cassette player, and they were kind of like DVDs, but you could fast forward and rewind, but you couldn't just skip tracks. You had to listen to the whole thing. But anyway, they would bring in cassette tapes of the Ayatollah and let churches hear him talk. Now, in the 1970s, Iran would begin to get rich from selling oil. Now, this further increased the gap in wealth between the rich and the poor. The Shah would buddy up with Jimmy Carter, and this made the Iranian people hate the U.S. even more. Okay, so they're getting rich, the rich are getting richer, and the leader who everybody sees as corrupt is... Can you deal with Joe, please? The people that everybody sees as really corrupt is in cahoots with America. Then, to make matters even worse, the Ayatollah's son dies from illness. Now, many people believe that he is murdered as a response to Ayatollah speaking out against the government. I tend to think he did die from illness. I don't see any reason to believe he was actually murdered, but it was believed he was murdered, at least by those that wanted to speak out against the government. Okay, so why would the Iranian people hate the U.S. at this point? Now, I want you to understand, we've overthrown their leader multiple times. We're working with the guy who's oppressing them. The United States is working with Israel, who they don't get along with. And then to make matters worse, you know, the Ayatollah's son is killed, and they kind of blame us, you know. Elizabeth? Elizabeth? Joseph?
Yeah.
Turn that off or take it in your room right now. Joe, I'm giving you one more chance before you lose that phone for the day. That's not fast enough.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
I don't know. I wasn't.
Yeah, I just got to hear me lay down the daddy law on my son there.
I don't know. I wasn't listening, so I just guessed.
Basically, in a nutshell, Jimmy Carter, our president at the time, is meeting with Iranian leaders who are supporting the leader that is oppressing them. And so they begin to really hate the U.S.
Oh. So I got it right?
Yeah, the Shah's butting up with Jimmy Carter. Very good. My dog, when he gets pet, grunts like a pig.
Yes, hello. Hello, yes. Hello, hello. Hello. Thank you. I'm going to pet my doggy. Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Why did you stop petting me?
Now, following the death of the Ayatollah Khomeini's son, a story is published by someone working for the government. Okay, so this is somebody who's like kind of like a propaganda guy, and he calls Iran in red. It's the name of the story is called Iran in Red and Black Colonization. The story called the Ayatollah a communist and a British agent, so it starts attacking the Ayatollah. The goal is to try to get people to stop listening to him, stop following, but it kind of backfires, and they kind of see that the government is even more corrupt. So many religious students began to protest, and as they start protesting, they call out the armed guard, and they begin to kill the students who were protesting.
That's sad. No funeral.
Now, when someone dies as a martyr, it is custom for the loss of a martyr to be celebrated for 40 days. So Khomeini, who is the Ayatollah, calls on them to do just that by declaring the students that were killed martyrs. However, the government doesn't want them to be declared martyrs, so anybody that protests or tries to mourn the loss of them, the government will step in and break it up. So they're not even allowed to have a funeral service for them. Now, 78 more protests would break out, and now they're put down violently. Some of the police were siding with the protesters at this point. So sometimes you'd send out the police, and the police would join the protesters in fighting against the government. On September 4th, the last day of Ramadan, they declare martial law, right? If you ever have been to an Islamic country, know somebody is Muslim, Ramadan is like their version of, I guess Christmas would be the best way. It's the big holiday of Islam. And they celebrate at the end by having this giant celebration that everybody participates in. But he's afraid that it's going to break out into protests. So eventually, he declares martial law, and 5,000 protesters took the streets, either in defiance or because they had misheard the declaration. They began to face off with soldiers, and the two sides would fight one another, ending with 64 people killed and 30 soldiers being killed. And they call this Iranian Black Friday. So what were the events that led to Black Friday that stood out to you? What were the events? You got the students protesting. They kill the students over a newspaper article, right? They kill the students. Students aren't allowed to have a funeral for their fallen, or the people aren't allowed to have a funeral for the fallen students as martyrs. More protest happens. Then at Ramadan, at the very end, the last day, you got Black Friday, where they end up having a giant war in the streets. So what of those events stood out the most to you?
Alright, I said these students being killed and having a funeral.
Right, that's tough too. Can you imagine if we had lost a lot of students and we weren't even allowed to have funerals for them?
That'd be pretty sad if, like...
Yeah, death of the students. I figured that would impact a lot of y'all the most.
It's like, I'm a student, and
Right.
I have a lot of classmates here.
Well, I tell you, we do take for granted. You know, I can speak ill of the president. I can speak favorably of the president. I can say whatever I want. And because of my First Amendment rights, I'm protected.
But, like, I have a lot of friends that, like, if that were to happen to them, I would be very upset.
Right, right.
Because Joe's a student, and if that happened to him, like, I would never come
That's
out of
right.
my room ever again. And I would probably kill the guy that killed Joe, but, like...
Oh, the exiling of the Ayatollah. Yeah, that was huge, too. That was huge.
If someone killed Joe, I would kill them. I'm just saying.
Don't say that. All right.
It's just a...
Many people began to go on strike, right? This is their last kind of way to fight back against the government. Is to like, hey, I'm just not showing up to work. More members of the clergy began to interview with the BBC and speak out against the Shah. So the religious leaders of the world start talking to the British news, which is kind of like one of the biggest news organizations on the planet. Then a protest in the capital of Tehran, which is the capital of Iran, got so violent that it was forced to remove their puppet prime minister and put in military rule. So they had a prime minister that was in place by the Shah. It gets so violent, the Shah says, look, no more government. We're done with government. Let's just put in military rule. So how do you think the media had an impact on Iran at this point? You know, the clergy are talking to the BBC. They're making the guy look really, really bad and oppressive, and then he has to declare martial law. So how do you think that's impacting Iran at this point? How do you think?
Well, like, he's gonna start making decisions based on what the media says about
Well,
him.
how do you think the news is making the Ayatollah look to the rest of the world? Or at least
Messed up.
the people. Well, no, they're making the Ayatollah and the religious people look like they're the oppressed. You know, it's kind of painting them in a sympathetic view, if you will. If that makes sense. It's making the Shah look even worse. Yeah, it incites a lot of conflicts with the government. That's absolutely right. Right, speaking out against the Shah. That's right. What's she writing? Hey, click record audio. Let me see what happens. Try that.
Hello.
Submit that and see what happens.
Oh, I can't hear anything because I have no volume.
I hit submit. Let me see what happens.
Oh, you could hear it.
Try that. By the way, y'all can submit audios if you're using your phone. Can you let Op out? I think he's crying outside. Okay, so religious leaders began to form, and they led a resistance to the Shah. They eventually, 10% of the country would take the streets, and they would force the Shah out. And the Ayatollah would return. Right. Now, the Carter administration struggled. What do we do now, right? The Shah has tried to put in place one last prime minister with the help of the U.S. So on his way out, he's like, here's your new prime minister. The United States backs him. Here's the guy, right? And the Shah would flee to Egypt, never to return. So why did the U.S. work with the Shah? Why do you think?
Wait, what happened all this time?
Okay, so the Shah is kicked out by the people. He puts in one last prime minister to kind of run the country on his way out. And the United States helps him put in this prime minister. Why do you think they worked with him? And again, what does the U.S. want?
Ooh!
What do they want? Well, real fast, just say, what do you think they want? Right, the oil, right? They're working with the Shah because they want to make sure there's a leader in power. Yeah, there you go, Velasco, the oil. That's right. They want to make sure a leader's in charge that's going to help them get that oil. They want that oil. That's right. Uh-oh, looks like we lost somebody. Oh, we lost Miss Bowman.
Well, we lost me a couple of times. Because I accidentally hit the X. And I didn't realize, but I did.
That's right.
So, yeah. I did it 2 times, so. But yeah.
All right, everybody's gotten it. The oil.
Your mouse is
That's
so
right, the
tiny.
oil.
The little mouse thingy. It's so tiny. The thing, you see?
Yeah.
So little mouse thingy.
Stop.
And hanged.
All right. So that was kind of a quick, brief rundown of everything I just went over, right? Which was in a good little video format. So the Shah would flee for the U.S. for medical treatment for cancer. The Iranian people demand that he be returned to Iran to face as any classified information.
Let's get a card over here. Burn it off. Come on. Burn everything. Burn the classified.
Don't fucking shoot anybody. You don't want to be the son of the bitch who started a war. They need an hour to burn.
So you can kind of get what happened. What do you think it would have been like to be an American at that embassy when the Iranian people start storming the embassy? What do you think they thought was going to happen to them?
They were all going to get killed.
Yeah, they freaked out. Absolutely. Yeah, they're afraid they're going to get killed. Yeah, it's got to be terrifying, right? I mean, imagine the horror of that, seeing that crowd. Yeah, it would be really, really fearful. Yeah, I'd be afraid I'd get killed.
People are watching right now. Only 10 people are here, but 12 people.
Yeah, a couple people watching. Don't play. That's fine. Okay. Now, Carter then tried to attempt a military rescue of the hostages they took in April of 1980. But the attempt failed and 8 soldiers died in the process in Operation Eagle Claw. Okay, so while these people are held hostage, 6 people are able to escape the embassy. But they're in Iran with no means to get home. So the U.S. sent in a CIA team to pretend to be a Canadian film crew making a science fiction movie called Argo. Now, that is not to be confused with the actual movie Argo based on what actually happened there, right? And I see that you put horrible in there, Miss Yvonne. So, the movie with Ben Affleck that he directed is called Argo, but it's the story about this fake movie called Argo. Okay? And I want you to see this is the kind of scene where they all escape. So back home, there's an actual production studio.